interesting. Now Simmons in transition. What a pass to Embiid! My goodness! Process that!
With the NBA back following a pandemic-related shutdown that lasted longer than 4 months, basketball fans are ready to dig into an endless array of storylines. And if you're looking for the most interesting team to follow in Disney World, it's gotta be the Philadelphia 76ers, whose future could be defined by what happens over the coming weeks and months. Because if the Sixers come up short again, this could very well spell the end of the Joel Embiid-Ben Simmons partnership, and render final judgment on the process as a failure. The Sixers entered the season, along with Milwaukee, as one of 2 clear-cut favorites in the Eastern Conference. I had them going to the finals. No East team possessed the abundance of sheer size or talent that Philly did. But while the Bucks ran away from the pack on a 66-win pace, the Sixers failed to live up to their preseason hype, entering the shutdown on a solid yet unspectacular 49-win pace. And the very reasons why Philly has been such a conundrum this season are the same reasons why their performance in Orlando is going to be so fascinating. One component of the Sixers' struggles this season was simply the injury bug, as Joel Embiid and Josh Richardson missed 21 games and 17 games respectively, while Ben Simmons missed the last few weeks of the season with a lower back injury that might have ended his campaign in an average year. But Simmons is back for the restart. And while the majority of teams heading to Orlando are dealing with some sort of roster uncertainty, the Sixers are one of the few teams currently operating at full strength. Given how rare that's been for them this season, that's almost reason alone to watch Philly. Then there's the historic home-road splits the Sixers posted this year. Philly went an absolutely absurd 29-2 at home, but the same Sixers team went 10-24 on the road. How in God's name do you explain that kind of discrepancy from one arena to the other for a team this talented? Whatever the answer to that question is, the Disney restart's going to tell us a lot about this team. Without the usual advantages of home court for any game in Orlando, will the Sixers team that shows up look like the one playing at a 24-win pace when they were on the road this year? Or does the fact there's no such thing as a road disadvantage for any team mean we'll see the Sixers team that played like a 76-win juggernaut at home? You could argue that the Sixers' talent should win out most nights in a neutral setting with all else being equal, but there's also always the possibility that the truth lies somewhere in the middle.
A little from column A, a little from column B.
Maybe the Sixers are simply what they've shown us they are over the course of 65 games. A good team, but far from the great team we expected them to be. At the end of the day though, a big part of the reason the Sixers fell short of expectations this season, and a big reason why they'll be so fascinating to watch, is that the offensive fit between Embiid and Simmons just doesn't make sense. And honestly, maybe it never will. That's the part Sixers fans probably don't want to acknowledge, given that we're talking about the 2 franchise cornerstones that serve as the lasting rewards of their team's painful, years-long process. Embiid is the most dominant low-post presence left in the modern game.
Embiid galloping past Leonard, and he threw it in reverse.
And he'd be best served surrounded by shooters in a half-court system. Yet he's often lifted to the perimeter to space the floor for Simmons, his point guard. Simmons struggles in the half-court because he literally can't shoot.
Ben Simmons shooting the jump shot now with some regularity. There it is right there. Unfortunately, he missed it badly.
But he's a brilliant playmaker who thrives in transition, where Embiid can't always keep up. Simmons would be at his best with shooters around him and a clear lane in front of him, not one clogged by a plodding big man.
Offense.
Look at Simmons just shoves Markkanen, who's pretty strong himself, out of the way and then slams it on him.
The collective two-way talent between these 2 stars is undeniable, and there's never seemed to be any kind of personal issues between Philly's franchise players.
The potential that we have, and I love him and I want to be with him for the rest of my career.
But you don't get a trophy in June for being nice guys. We're approaching the end of year 3 of this partnership. That might sound like a small sample size for a duo this young, but given how fast the NBA moves these days, That's a pretty long time to stick with a star duo when the same issues continue to pop up no matter who you surround them with. Whether it's Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris, Al Horford, or any other complementary star. Without the necessary space to work with, Simmons and Embiid still turn the ball over too often, the team struggles to get a consistent offensive flow going, and the Sixers as a whole continue to fall short of what we perceive to be a sky-high ceiling. With Embiid and Simmons sharing the court, the team has a net rating of plus 0.9 points per 100 possessions that would rank 14th league-wide. With Simmons on and Embiid off, that net rating jumps to plus 2.7, which would be good for 11th. But with Embiid on and Simmons off, Philly plays like the best team in the league, posting a plus 11.2 net rating that even the league-leading Bucks can't match. At what point does the organization realize that trudging on with both of these dynamic stars is like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole?
I mean, I just couldn't get the ball in the hole. I wanted to, but I just couldn't do it.
The latest adjustment is apparently going to be having Simmons serve as a power forward rather than a point guard, which would still allow him plenty of room to operate as a Draymond Green-like playmaker on the roll. As the point guard or nominal ball handler in pick-and-roll actions, Simmons loses some effectiveness because defenses don't respect him as a shooting threat coming off screens. But as the roller with some downhill momentum in those scenarios, a playmaker who already excels at creating three-point looks for his teammates could further thrive finding the corners and lob threats. But even that seemingly sensible lineup adjustment, which would see Shake Milton join the starting five after shooting 51% from deep over his last 20 games, still highlights some of the mistakes made and existing concerns with the Sixers roster construction. For one, after drafting Markelle Fultz #1 overall in 2017, watching him forget how to shoot a basketball, then trading him for pennies on the dollar last year, the Sixers still haven't found the type of go-to point guard that would make sliding Simmons up a few positions a much easier decision. Secondly, moving Simmons to the front court means moving Horford to the bench. The same Al Horford the Sixers owe more than $54 million to over the next 2 seasons, and potentially up to $81 million to over the next 3 seasons. The same Al Horford they splurged on last summer during the same free agency period that saw them lose Jimmy Butler. You know, the guy who almost dragged them past the eventual champs last spring while looking like the only Sixer unafraid of the moment. The same Jimmy Butler the Sixers might have to go through in a potential first-round matchup with Miami. Look, maybe the healthy Sixers arrived in Orlando ready to take on the world. Maybe they'll figure out how to bottle up the magic they discovered when playing at home this season. Maybe their size and defensive upside proves too great for any East rivals to overcome, and none of the Embiid-Simmons fit issues even matter anymore. Hell, maybe Simmons has come back with a softer touch as a shooter. Yeah.
From what I hear, you couldn't hit water if you fell out of a fucking boat.
But barring those best case, and in some cases far-fetched scenarios, I think we all know how this ends. If the Sixers don't realize their preseason potential and advance to at least the Eastern Conference Finals, and probably the Finals, changes are coming. Is 2 seasons enough to put general manager Elton Brand on the hot seat? Surely time is running out on Brett Brown's 7-year tenure. Brown's far from being the guy to blame here, but he's avoided the chopping block for a while now given recent disappointments. He's coached under 3 GMs in those 7 years, and he hasn't always done the best job holding Embiid and Simmons accountable for their consistent inconsistency. But at some point, while heads may very well roll off the court, the Sixers are going to need to look at what's happening, or rather not happening, on the court. If they can't get it done together at full strength, on an even playing field this time around, will there be a next time for Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons? Thanks for watching. If you liked this video and want to see more content like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button.